She married a black single dad for a deal, but the billionaire heiress didn't expect love. The kitchen is falling apart. Stainless steel gleams under industrial lights. Steam rises in thick clouds. Orders pile up on the pass. Critics and investors sit 30 feet away in the dining room, unaware that the flagship restaurant of the Laurent Hotel is collapsing in real time. Victoria Ashford-Laurent stands at the expo station, watching her empire crumble. Designer dress. Perfect hair. Hands shaking. Half the line cooks didn't show. Prep stations are incomplete. This is sabotage. Her brother made sure of that. Then the kitchen doors swing open. A man walks in wearing chef whites that don't belong to him. Tall, lean, brown skin catching the overhead lights. He moves through the chaos like he's done this 1,000 times before. The sous chef looks up, freezes. "Who are?" "I've got this," the man says. Quiet authority, the kind you don't question. Victoria stares at him. Her husband, the kind you don't question. The food truck operator she hired 6 months ago to secure her inheritance. The transaction she signed like a business contract. She's watched him make sandwiches for hospital workers. She's never seen him like this. He steps to the line, calls orders with surgical precision. His hands move, fast, controlled, exact. The kitchen shifts around him, falling into rhythm. A food critic in the dining room tastes the first course. Her face changes. "This technique," she whispers. "I know this." The businessman beside her leans in. "What is it?" She sets down her fork, voice rising. "This is Elijah Cross's cooking. Meridian." Elijah Cross. The name hits the room like a shockwave. Victoria's brother Marcus sitting at the bar, his smug expression cracks. Victoria's mind is racing. The legendary Detroit restaurant that closed 12 years ago. The chef who walked away from 2 Michelin stars and vanished. She turns to look at the man in the kitchen, her husband, the stranger she thought she controlled. If you believe that people are never just what they seem, that quiet strength runs deeper than power ever will, stay with this story. Because what happens next will shatter everything you think you know about love, identity, and what it means to truly see someone. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, have you ever completely misjudged someone, only to discover they were extraordinary all along? But to understand how we got here, how a billionaire heiress ended up married to a man whose past she never bothered to ask about, we need to go back 6 months, to a Wednesday afternoon in a food truck outside Detroit Medical Center. The food truck smelled like smoke and caramelized onions, and the kind of patience most people didn't have anymore. Elijah Cross stood at the flat-top grill, flipping brisket with tongs that had lost their spring 2 years ago, watching the lunch line snake past the center's main entrance, 23 people deep. He'd counted. October in Detroit meant cold that hadn't committed yet. The kind of afternoon where the sun felt warm but the wind cut through your jacket. Elijah wore his usual dark jeans, white t-shirt under a gray hoodie, an apron that used to be black. His hands moved without thought, slicey layer, drizzle, wrap. "Next. Extra pickles, Mr. Cross," the nurse in blue scrubs said when she reached the window. "I remember, Miss Patricia." She smiled, paid, moved on. Behind him, tucked in the corner between the propane tank and the milk crate full of napkins, his daughter sat cross-legged with a math worksheet balanced on her knees. Maya was 11, all legs and elbows, her hair braided in neat cornrows he'd watched 4 YouTube videos to learn. She hummed while she worked. Some song from a movie he'd taken her to last month. "Dad, what's 7 times 12? 84. "You didn't even look. Don't need to." She grinned at that, went back to her worksheet. The line moved. Elijah's hands stayed busy. This was the rhythm. This was the life. Up at 5 to prep park outside the hospital by 10:30. Serve until 2. Pick Maya up from school at 3:15. Evenings were for homework and dinner, and whatever show she wanted to watch. Weekends were for cleaning the truck and grocery shopping and letting her sleep in. It was small. It was enough. Mostly. The lunch rush thinned around 1:45. Elijah wiped down the counter, restocked the napkin dispenser, checked the propane levels. Maya hopped down from her corner and started bagging leftover rolls. She knew the routine. "We do good today?" she asked. "Good enough. Good enough for new shoes?" He looked at her feet. The sneakers were holding together but barely. He'd been noticing. "Maybe next month, baby." She nodded. Didn't complain. Never did. That was the thing that kept him up nights. How easily she accepted, maybe next month. How she never asked for more than he could give. How she braided friendship bracelets out of embroidery thread instead of asking for the ones her classmates bought at the mall. He was giving her enough to survive, but not enough to survive. Not enough to dream. The black car pulled up at 2:10. Elijah noticed it because people didn't park luxury sedans outside food trucks. They rolled through, grabbed lunch, left. This one stopped, idled. The engine purred like money. The woman who stepped out looked like she'd never eaten food from a truck window in her life. She was tall. Late 30s, maybe 40. Hair pulled back in a way that probably cost more than Elijah made in a week. Coat that moved like silk. Heels that clicked on pavement. Her skin was pale in the autumn light, the kind of smooth that came from expensive creams and never worrying about bills. She walked up to the window. Studied the menu board. "What's good?" she asked. Her voice was cool, professional, the kind of tone people used when they were buying things. "Brisket's what people come for," Elijah said. "I'll take one." He made it the way he made everything, carefully, with attention. Sliced the meat thin. Layered it on the toasted roll his grandmother's recipe said to use. Added his mother's slaw, wrapped it tight. She paid with a 50, told him to keep the change. Then she stood there, didn't leave, ate half the sandwich in small, precise bites while the last few customers trickled through. When the line cleared, she was still there. Maya had gone quiet in her corner. Kids knew when adults were waiting for something. "Can I help you with something else?" Elijah asked. The woman set down her sandwich, pulled a business card from her coat pocket, slid it across the counter. Victoria Ashford-Laurent, CEO, Laurent Holdings. "I have a proposition," she said. Elijah looked at the card. Looked at her. "I'm listening." "Not here." She glanced at Maya. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately? Anything you need to say, you can say in front of my daughter." Her expression didn't change. "Fine. I need a husband, 12 months. Contract marriage. You fulfill certain public obligations. I compensate you financially." The words landed like stones. Elijah's hands went still on the counter. "You're serious?" "I don't waste time on jokes, Mr. Cross." She named a figure, monthly, for a year. It was more than he made in 6 months. "Why me?" "You're a single father. Stable employment. No criminal record. Low public profile. You need money." She said it like she was listing ingredients. "I need to meet the terms of my grandfather's will to secure my inheritance. My brother is trying to take control of my company. I need to be married. I don't need love. I don't need companionship. I need a legal arrangement." Maya's pencil had stopped moving. Elijah felt his jaw tighten. Felt heat crawl up the back of his neck. "That's not something you can buy." "Everything can be bought, Mr. Cross. It's just a matter of finding the right price." She pulled out her phone, pulled up a document. "I'll pay off your truck loan. Set up a college fund for your daughter. Private school tuition if you want it. Medical insurance. A living stipend that would let you stop working 80-hour weeks." She turned the phone toward him. The numbers were there. Real, specific. "You're asking me to sell myself. I'm offering you financial security in exchange for a year of your time." Her voice didn't waver. "You're a smart man. You know what that kind of money could do for her." She didn't point at Maya. Didn't need to. Elijah looked at his daughter, at her worn sneakers and her second-hand backpack, and the way she was trying very hard to pretend she wasn't listening. He looked at the truck. At the peeling paint and the broken handle on the storage bin and the dent in the side panel he couldn't afford to fix. He looked at the card in his hand. "I need 24 hours, he said. Victoria nodded. "You have my number." She walked back to her car, got in, drove away. The truck was silent. Maya looked up at him. "Dad?" "It's okay, baby. Just someone with a weird idea. But it's okay, baby. Just someone with a weird idea." But his hand was shaking when he put the card in his pocket. That night, after Maya went to bed, Elijah sat at their kitchen table in the east side. 2 bedrooms. Heat that worked most of the time. Neighbors who played music too loud but looked out for each other. He looked at the card. He looked at the bills stacked on the counter. He looked at Maya's school picture on the fridge, her smile big and bright and trusting. He picked up his phone, typed 4 words. "I'll do it." The law office sat 40 floors above the street, all glass and steel and views that made Detroit look smaller than it was. Elijah stood in the elevator watching the numbers climb, his reflection distorted in the polished metal doors. He'd worn his good suit, the one he kept for funerals and Maya's school events. It still fit, barely. The shoulders pulled a little tighter than they used to. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that smelled like expensive leather and air conditioning. A woman in a crisp blazer led him down a hallway lined with artwork that probably cost more than his truck. The conference room was all windows. Glass walls, glass table, glass city spreading out below. Victoria sat at the far end, laptop open, looking like she belonged there. Her attorney, a thin man with silver hair and rimless glasses, sat beside her with a stack of documents. "Mr. Cross," the attorney said. "Please sit." Elijah sat. The attorney slid the contract across the table. It was thick, bound official. "This is straightforward," the attorney said. 12-month marriage contract. Termination clause on the anniversary date unless both parties agree to extend. Financial terms as discussed. Ms. Ashford-Laurent will maintain primary residence. You and your daughter will occupy the guest wing. Separate living arrangements. Public appearances as required for business purposes. Elijah read. The language was cold, clinical. Words like party of the first part and mutual obligations and like he was signing a lease, not a life. He flipped pages. Read the numbers. They were real. Maya's college fund, private school tuition, health insurance. A monthly stipend that would let him actually breathe. He found the signature line at the bottom of page 12. Picked up the pen. The door slammed open. A man walked in like he owned the building. Probably did, Elijah thought. He was tall, thick around the middle, wearing a suit that cost more than Elijah made in 3 months. His face was red, angry. His eyes landed on Elijah and stayed there. "Marcus," Victoria said. Her voice was flat. "This is a private meeting. Family business is family business, sister." Marcus pulled out a chair. Sat without being invited. Another man followed him in, younger, nervous, carrying a briefcase, his lawyer. Marcus leaned back, crossed his arms, looked at Elijah the way someone looks at a stain on their shoe. "So this is him," Marcus said. "The solution to your little problem." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Marcus, a food truck operator." Marcus smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. How delightfully urban. The word landed wrong. Elijah felt it in his chest. "Tell me," Marcus continued, "do you even own a suit, or will Victoria need to dress you for public appearances, teach you which fork to use at dinner?" Victoria's attorney shifted in his seat. "Mr. Ashford-Laurent, this isn't. I'm just looking out for the family." Marcus's lawyer slid a document across the table. "My client wants to ensure appropriate protections are in place." Elijah looked down. Another contract, thicker than the first. "A prenuptial agreement," Marcus said. "Standard stuff. Keeps everything clean. There are clauses about appropriate behavior, media restrictions. We wouldn't want you running to the press with stories, would we? Financial limitations, naturally. You'll receive your agreed-upon compensation and nothing more." He leaned forward. "We wouldn't want you getting ideas above your station." The room was quiet. Outside the windows, Detroit moved. Cars and people and lives that didn't involve sitting in a glass box being told where they belonged. Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out a bill. A 20, crisp and new. He slid it across the table toward Elijah. "For your trouble," Marcus said. "Consider it a tip." The attorney beside Victoria looked away. Victoria herself just watched. Her face was blank, professional, like she was observing a business negotiation that didn't concern her. Testing him, Elijah realized, seeing if he'd break. His hand moved to the 20, stopped. His fingers pressed against the table. He thought about Maya, about the school she could go to, the opportunities she could have, the life she deserved. He thought about this man's voice, the word urban, the way it felt designed to cut. He picked up the pen, signed the first contract, signed the second, pushed the 20 back across the table. "Keep it," Elijah said. "I don't take tips." Marcus's smile widened. "Of course you don't." He stood, gestured to his lawyer. They left the way they came, loud, taking up space, the door closing with a soft click behind them. Silence settled over the room. Victoria gathered the documents. stacked them with precise movements. "The wedding is scheduled for November 2nd, she said. "My assistant will send you the details. Judge's chambers, civil ceremony. We'll keep it simple." She stood, extended her hand. Elijah shook it. Her grip was firm, cold. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Cross." She left. Elijah sat alone in the glass room, with the view of the city and the contracts he'd just signed, and the taste of humiliation still sharp in his mouth. He drove home with his hands tight on the wheel. The neighborhoods changed as he moved east glass towers giving way to brick buildings, clean sidewalks turning rough. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel. Maya was at their neighbor Mrs. Davis's apartment. She ran to him when he knocked, backpack bouncing. She ran to him when he knocked, backpack bouncing. "How'd it go?" she asked. Elijah looked at his daughter, at her bright eyes and her braids and the way she trusted him completely. "Good," he said. "Real good, baby." "Yeah, yeah." He knelt down, met her eyes. "We're gonna move to a nicer place. Bigger house, better school." Maya's face lit up. "Really? Really?" She hugged him. Elijah closed his eyes and held her tight and tried not to think about the man who'd looked at him like he was nothing, or the woman who'd watched it happen without saying a word. The county courthouse smelled like old paper and floor wax. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in flat white that made the gray walls look grayer. Elijah stood in the hallway outside the judge's chambers with his daughter beside him, both of them dressed like they were going somewhere important. Maya wore a yellow dress they'd bought at Target 2 days ago. She'd picked it herself, said it looked like sunshine. Elijah wore his suit. The same one from the law office, pressed again, still pulling tight across the shoulders. Victoria arrived exactly on time. She wore a tailored suit in pale gray, her hair pulled back smooth and pale gray. Her hair pulled back smooth and perfect. She nodded at them, said nothing. A clerk appeared at the door. "We're ready." The judge's chambers were small. Wood paneling, a desk with too many papers, an American flag in the corner. Two people Elijah had never seen before stood against the wall. The witnesses, pulled from somewhere in the building to watch strangers promise forever. The judge was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain. She looked at her computer screen, then at them. "This is a civil ceremony," she said. "Simple and brief. Do you have the license?" Victoria handed it over. The judge glanced at it, set it aside. "Please face each other." Elijah turned. Victoria turned. They stood 2 feet apart. Her face was calm, professional, like she was in a meeting. Maya stood beside Elijah, holding the small bouquet of daisies she'd insisted on bringing. Her hand gripped the stems too tight. The judge read from a script she'd probably read 1,000 times. The words were old and worn smooth. Love, honor, cherish. Better or worse. Richer or poorer. Sickness and health. Every word felt like it belonged to someone else's ceremony. "Do you, Victoria Marie Ashford-Laurent, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." Victoria's voice was steady, clear, the same tone she'd used to order brisket from his truck. "Do you, Elijah Marcus Cross, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Elijah's throat was tight. He looked at Maya, at her yellow dress and her hopeful face and the way she was trying so hard to smile. "I do." Something inside him went quiet, settled into a dark place he couldn't reach. The judge produced 2 rings, plain gold bands Victoria had ordered online. They exchanged them. The metal was cold against Elijah's skin. By the metal was cold against Elijah's skin. By the power vested in me by the state of Michigan, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The judge just picked up a pen and slid the marriage certificate across her desk. Victoria signed first. Her signature was quick, practiced. Elijah signed second. His hand was steady, even though his chest felt hollow. The witnesses signed below their names. The judge stamped the document, filed it. "Congratulations," she said, already looking at her computer screen again. They walked out into the hallway. Maya tugged Elijah's sleeve. "Dad, why wasn't there any music?" "It's not that kind of wedding, baby." "But weddings have music. And cake." Mrs. Davis showed me pictures from her wedding. They had a big cake with flowers. Victoria's expression flickered. Something passed across her face, almost recognition, almost regret. Then it smoothed away like water over stone. We'll have cake at home, she said. Maya's face brightened. Really? Yes. They walked to the parking garage. Victoria's black sedan was on the second level. Elijah's truck was on the fourth. They rode the elevator in silence. Elijah and Maya going up, Victoria going down. The doors closed between them. Elijah drove east, following the directions Victoria's assistant had sent. The neighborhoods, his part of Detroit, fell away. The corner stores and bus stops and houses pressed close together. Trees appeared, lawns spread wide. Houses became estates hidden behind gates and long driveways. Maya pressed her face to the window. We're really gonna live here? For a while. It's fancy. Yeah. Victoria's estate sat at the end of a private road. The gate opened when Elijah pulled up. Someone watching cameras somewhere, letting them through. The driveway curved through trees that were probably older than he was. The house appeared through the branches like something from a magazine, modern. All glass and sharp angles and clean white stone. Expensive in a way that made Elijah's truck look like it didn't belong in the driveway. Victoria's car was already there. She stood on the front steps with a woman in a black dress. Her assistant, probably. Mr. Cross, the assistant said as Elijah and Maya approached. I'm Caroline. I'll show you to your rooms. Not our rooms. Your rooms. Your rooms. Inside, the house was cold. Beautiful, but cold. Marble floors. High ceilings. Art on the walls that Elijah didn't understand. Everything looked like it cost more than he'd ever owned. Caroline led them through hallways that echoed. Past a living room no one seemed to use. Past a dining room with a table that could seat 12. Down a corridor to the east wing. These are your quarters, Caroline said, opening a door. The guest wing had its own living room. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchenette. It was bigger than the apartment Elijah and Maya had left behind. Ms. Ashford-Laurent maintains the main house, Caroline continued. She travels Monday through Thursday most weeks, returns Friday evenings, departs Sunday nights. You're welcome to use the main kitchen if you prefer to cook. Staff can prepare meals if needed. The pool and gym are available. Please respect the boundaries of the main residence when Ms. Ashford-Laurent is home. She handed Elijah a folder. Schedules, Wi-Fi passwords, emergency contacts. If you need anything, call this number. Caroline left. The door clicked shut. Maya walked through the room slowly, touching things carefully like she was afraid they'd break. She opened the door to what would be her bedroom. It had a queen bed with white sheets, a desk, a window that looked out over the backyard. It's really pretty, she said quietly. Yeah, but it doesn't feel like ours. Elijah sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was expensive, firm, nothing like the second-hand one Maya had slept on her whole life. It's just for a year, baby. Maya climbed onto the bed beside him. She still held her daisies. They were starting to wilt. Dad? Yeah? Is Victoria going to be my mom now? The question sat between them. Heavy. Impossible. Elijah put his arm around her, pulled her close. She smelled like the drugstore shampoo he bought and the laundry detergent from the laundromat and home. I don't know, he said. Because he didn't. Because nothing about this arrangement felt like family. Because they'd just signed papers in a fluorescent room with strangers watching and driven to separate houses and been shown to quarters like guests in a hotel. Maya leaned against him. Can I still call you Dad? His chest tightened. Always. Outside, the sun was setting. The mansion's windows glowed gold. Somewhere in the main house, Victoria was probably working. Answering emails, making calls, living her life like nothing had changed, because for her, nothing had. She'd acquired what she needed, checked a box, fulfilled a requirement. Elijah looked around the beautiful room that wasn't theirs, in the mansion that would never be home, and started unpacking boxes that still smelled like their old apartment on the east side. November turned cold, the kind of Detroit cold that came early and stayed, frost coating the windows in the morning, wind cutting through jackets that had been fine a week before. Inside Victoria's estate, the heat worked perfectly. The temperature never changed. Everything stayed controlled. Victoria was gone, most of the time. Monday morning she left before Elijah and Maya woke up. Black car in the driveway at 6, assistant waiting with coffee and a briefcase. Chicago, New York, Boston. She ran her empire from hotel conference rooms and first-class airplane seats. Friday evening she returned, heels clicking on marble, phone pressed to her ear. Sunday nights she left again. When she was home, she was polite, professional. She asked Maya how school was going while checking her email. She thanked Elijah for keeping the guest wing tidy. She moved through the house like she was visiting it, not living in it. She set a place for Victoria at dinner every night, even the nights Victoria didn't come home. She drew pictures at school and left them on Victoria's desk, stick figures of 3 people holding hands, a house with too many windows, a sun that took up half the page. She asked Victoria about her work, about her day, about whether she liked spaghetti or tacos better. Victoria answered. Brief, kind responses that sounded like she was talking to a colleague's child at a company party. School is important. Keep working hard. That's a lovely drawing, Maya. Very colorful. I don't have a preference. Either is fine. Elijah watched his daughter's brightness dim a little more each week. Watched her stop leaving drawings, stop asking questions, stop setting that extra place at dinner. He resented Victoria for it, for the coldness, for the way she treated this arrangement like a business acquisition that required occasional maintenance, for assuming money fixed everything when what Maya needed was someone to see her. He kept cooking, not food truck fare. The elaborate meals he used to make when cooking, not food truck fare. But I used to make when cooking meant something more than survival. Braised short ribs that took 6 hours. His grandmother's gumbo from memory, food that filled the silence in the guest wing, that made their corner of this mansion feel a little less like a waiting room. Maya helped. She chopped vegetables at the kitchen island, her knife technique getting better every week. She tasted sauces and told him when they needed more salt. She talked about her day, the mean girl in math class, the book she was reading, the way her science teacher looked like that actor from the superhero movie. They were okay, just the two of them, the way it had always been. Then one Tuesday in late November, Victoria came home early. Elijah heard the front door, heard footsteps in the main house. It was barely 6 o'clock. She wasn't supposed to be back until Friday. He was teaching Maya to make his mother's peach cobbler. Flour dusted the counter, the floor, Maya's nose. She was laughing, trying to cut butter into the flour the way he'd shown her, making a mess of it. Like this? She asked, holding up the pastry cutter. Little more pressure? You want it to look like crumbs. It looks like a disaster. Disasters taste good. Maya giggled. Pressed harder. Flour puffed into the air. Elijah looked up. Victoria stood in the doorway. She wore a charcoal suit, her coat still on, briefcase in one hand. Her hair was pulled back tight. She looked tired, beautiful and tired and completely out of place in a kitchen where a man and his daughter were covered in flour. She didn't say anything, just stood there, watching. Maya noticed her. Her whole face changed, opened up, brightened. Victoria, we're making peach cobbler. Dad's teaching me. Do you want to help? I don't cook. You can watch then. Dad says watching is how you learn best anyway. Victoria's expression shifted. Something moved behind her eyes. She set down her briefcase, stayed in the doorway. Elijah went back to work. Showed Maya how to layer the peaches, how to dot the top with butter, how to tell when the crust was ready. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and sugar, and the kitchen in his mother's house 25 years ago. Maya put the cobbler in the oven, set the timer, looked at Victoria. It takes 40 minutes. You should try it when it's done. Dad makes the best desserts. I'm sure he does. 40 minutes later, Maya pulled the cobbler out. Golden crust, peaches bubbling at the edges. She scooped a portion into a bowl before Elijah could stop her, walked it to Victoria, held it out like an offering. Try it. Please? Victoria took the bowl, looked at it, took a bite. Her face changed, went soft for half a second before she caught it, smoothed it back. It's good, she said. Her voice sounded different, rough around the edges. Really good, she added. Maya beamed. Dad taught me everything. He's the best cook ever. Victoria looked at Elijah over Maya's head. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. A question maybe, or a realization that Elijah couldn't name. Thank you, Victoria said quietly. She finished the cobbler, rinsed the bowl, set it in the sink, went to her study without another word. But she'd stood in that doorway longer than she needed to, had watched them longer than was necessary, had tasted something Elijah made, and for just a moment looked like a person instead of a contract. 3 days later, Maya came home from school crying. Elijah found her at the kitchen table, homework spread in front of her, tears streaming down her face. He knelt beside her chair. "What's wrong, baby?" She pushed the paper toward him. A family tree assignment, branches and empty boxes where names should go. "I don't know what to write," she whispered. "Write your grandparents, your mom, me. But what about Victoria? Is she family? Do I put her on here? My teacher said married people go together, but she's not really. I mean, she doesn't." Her voice broke. Elijah pulled her into his arms, felt her shoulders shake. "It's okay, we'll figure it out. She doesn't even eat dinner with us. She doesn't ask about school. She's never home." Maya's voice was muffled against his shoulder. "I thought when you got married, that's what happened. That's what Jasmine's mom said. That families eat together and talk and—" "Sure, it's okay. I got you." He didn't know what else to say. Couldn't explain this arrangement to an 11-year-old who'd never asked for any of it. Couldn't tell her that Victoria wasn't really her stepmother, that this was all transaction and paperwork and a year they just had to survive. Footsteps in the hallway. Elijah looked up. Victoria stood there, still in her work clothes, phone in her hand. She'd heard everything. Her face was unreadable, but her hand, the one not holding the phone, gripped the doorframe, tight enough that her knuckles went pale. Their eyes met, held. Victoria turned, walked away. Her heels clicked down the hall, softer and softer until a door closed somewhere in the main house. Elijah held his daughter and felt something shift, some crack in the foundation that he couldn't see but could feel in his chest. That night, after Maya went to bed, Elijah stood at the window of the guest wing looking out over the dark estate. The main house glowed. Lights on in Victoria's study. She was still awake. Still working. In that study, Victoria sat at her desk with her laptop open and her phone dark and her eyes unfocused on the screen. She was thinking about peach cobbler, about flour and laughter and the way that child's face had lit up when she'd asked her to stay, about the question on that family tree paper, about the way Elijah had looked at her when she'd stood in that doorway, not with judgment, but with something worse, pity maybe, or disappointment. She was thinking about a little girl crying because she didn't know where to put her stepmother's name. For the first time in years, Victoria felt ashamed. December hit Detroit like a closed fist. Snow came early, heavy and relentless, turning the city gray. Inside Victoria's estate, the heat stayed perfect. The lights stayed bright. Nothing changed except the woman who lived there. Victoria was unraveling. It started the second week of December. The celebrity chef she'd hired for the Laurent Grand Hotel's signature restaurant, a man with 3 Michelin stars and an ego to match, quit during a planning meeting, not privately, not professionally. He walked out, called a press contact from the parking lot, and accused Victoria of corporate soullessness and treating cuisine like a spreadsheet. The quote was online within an hour, trending by evening. Her brother Marcus forwarded it to the board with a single line. "This is the leadership you're betting on." The opening was 12 weeks away. Investors, critics, and press already scheduled. The restaurant was supposed to be the crown jewel. The thing that proved Victoria could blend luxury with vision. That proved she was more than her grandfather's name. Without a chef, she had nothing. Elijah watched it happen from the guest wing. Watched Victoria's car arrive later each night. Watched the lights in her study stay on until dawn. Heard her on phone calls that got shorter, sharper, more desperate. She stopped coming home some nights. Just stayed at the hotel site or her downtown office, running on coffee and whatever her assistant brought her. When she was home, she moved like a ghost. Pale, hollow-eyed. Her suits hung looser. Her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. Maya noticed. "Is Victoria sick?" she asked one morning at breakfast. "Just working hard, baby." She looked sad. She did. She looked like someone drowning in deep water with no one close enough to hear her call for help. Marcus called an emergency board meeting the 3rd week of December. Elijah only knew because he heard Victoria on the phone in her study, her voice tight and furious. "I have 11 weeks. I'll find a chef. I'll make this work." A pause. Her brother's voice leaked through the speaker, loud and smug. "Then do it, Victoria, or step aside and let someone competent take over." She ended the call, threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall hard enough that Elijah heard the crack from the hallway. He didn't go in. Wasn't his place. They lived in the same house but existed in different worlds. The breaking point came 3 nights later. Elijah couldn't sleep. too quiet. He'd gotten used to Maya's breathing in the room next to his, the sounds of their old apartment sirens and music and neighbors arguing. The estate was silent in a way that felt wrong. He got up at 1:45, thought about making tea, maybe sitting in the kitchen for a while until the silence felt less heavy. The lights were already on when he got there. Victoria stood at the counter, phone pressed to her ear, still in her suit from however many hours ago. Her back was to him. She didn't hear him approach. He stopped in the doorway. "I don't know how to fix this." Her voice cracked. "I've called everyone. No one wants to touch a project this close to opening. They think it's cursed. They think I'm—" She stopped, listened, her shoulders hunched. "I know what Marcus is saying. I know what Marcus is saying. I know what Marcus is saying. I know what the board thinks. Just give me time, please." She ended the call, pressed her palms to her eyes. Not in her, in himself. 12 years ago, standing in Meridian's kitchen 3 weeks after Jasmine died, trying to make himself care about a dish he'd cooked 100 times, unable to remember why any of it mattered. He knew what breaking looked like. Victoria didn't see him. He could leave. Go back to bed. Let her collapse in private the way she'd let him suffer in private since they'd signed those papers. His hands moved before he decided. Opened the refrigerator. Found what he needed. Started pulling ingredients. He moved quietly. No wasted motion. Duck breast from the back of the fridge. Expensive. The kind Victoria's chef probably ordered and never used. Cherry preserves in the pantry. Balsamic that cost more than his truck's insurance. Fresh burrata. The good olive oil. His mother's cornbread recipe lived in his hands. He didn't need to think about measurements. Just felt his way through it. Added honey the way Jasmine used to suggest. Truffle oil because the bottle was there, and she would have laughed at the extravagance of it. Victoria finished her call. Stood at the counter for a long time, just breathing. Elijah seared the duck. The kitchen filled with the smell of rendered fat and caramelizing meat. He built the gastric cherries in vinegar and sugar, reduced until it coated the back of a spoon, sliced tomatoes paper thin, arranged them with burrata and basil, and the kind of attention he hadn't given food in years. This wasn't food truck cooking. This was the other thing. The thing he'd walked away from. Victoria turned, saw him, stopped. Her eyes were red. Her hair had come loose from its perfect twist. She looked at the stove, at the ingredients spread across the counter, at him standing there in sweatpants and a t-shirt cooking like it was 2 in the afternoon instead of 2 in the morning. "What are you doing?" "Helping," Elijah said. He plated. Duck breast sliced on the bias, skin crisp and golden. Gastrique pooled beside it, dark and glossy. The tomato salad on a separate plate, colors bright against white porcelain. Cornbread still warm from the oven. He set it in front of her. "Try this." Victoria looked at the food. Adam, back at the food. She picked up a fork, cut into the duck. The meat was perfect pink in the center, crisp at the edges. She took a bite, her expression changed, went still, focused. She chewed slowly, swallowed, stared at the plate. "What is this?" Her voice was different, quieter, present in a way it hadn't been in weeks. "Duck with cherry gastrique, my grandmother's cornbread. Tomatoes the way my wife used to like them." Victoria took another bite, then another. She wasn't eating like someone who was hungry. She was eating like someone trying to understand something. The duck was gone in minutes. She started on the tomatoes, tasted the cornbread, and closed her eyes. "Who taught you to cook like this?" The question hung in the air between them. Elijah's hands rested on the counter, scarred brown skin against white marble. He could lie. Could tell her he learned from YouTube like he told Maya. Could walk away and let this stay a strange middle-of-the-night kindness between strangers who happened to share an address. But she'd asked. For the first time since that day at his truck, she'd actually asked him something real. "I did," he said. Victoria set down her fork, looked at him across the kitchen island. Her eyes were different now, focused, present. "I did," Elijah said. The silence stretched. The kitchen hummed, refrigerator, heating system. Sounds of a house too big for the people living in it. "You taught yourself to cook like this?" "No." He leaned against the counter. "I was taught, by a lot of people, but this." He gestured at the empty plates. "This I built myself." "Where?" The question was simple. The answer wasn't. Elijah's hands rested on the marble. He looked at them, Scarred, calloused, the deep brown skin showing every burn and cut from years of work. These hands had done a lot of things. Built something beautiful. Lost it. Started over. I owned a restaurant, he said. Meridian, downtown near the river. Opened it when I was 26. Victoria's expression shifted. Recognition flickered across her face. Meridian, the one that closed. 12 years ago. Yeah. That was yours? Mine and my wife's. He hadn't said her name out loud to anyone but Maya in years. It felt strange in his mouth. Heavy. Jasmine, he said. She was a sculptor. Sold vegetables at the Eastern market to pay rent while she worked on her art. I met her there. She was selling tomatoes. Heritage varieties. I asked her which one she'd use for a caprese. She told me I was asking the wrong question. Victoria waited. She said I should ask which tomato told the best story. Which one made people remember summer. Which one tasted like something worth caring about. Elijah's voice was quiet. I bought all of them. Went back every Saturday for 6 months until she agreed to have dinner with me. He moved to the sink, rinsed the plates. It was easier to talk with his hands busy. We got married a year later, built Meridian together. She did the art sculptures, installations, the whole aesthetic. I did the food. We sourced from black farmers across Michigan. Made Southern food the way it deserved to be made. Elevated but honest, like my grandmother's kitchen met French technique. 2 Michelin stars, Victoria said. By the time I was 30. He dried his hands. Food and Wine did a feature. The Times sent a critic. We were on lists. Getting offers from New York, Chicago. Everyone wanted us to expand, franchise, do the TV thing. We were building something that mattered. The past tense sat between them. What happened? Elijah turned, looked at her. Maya happened. Victoria's face changed. Jasmine died 2 days after giving birth. Complicated. Things that weren't supposed to go wrong, but did. His voice stayed level, factual, the only way he could say it. I had a newborn daughter and a restaurant and a life that didn't make sense without her in it. He moved to the window. Dawn was coming. The sky over the estate was turning gray. I tried to keep going, stayed open for 6 months, but every dish reminded me of her. Every plate, every table, every moment in that kitchen. I couldn't do it anymore, sold it, walked away. And the food truck. Maya needed a father who could be there. Who could pick her up from school and know her friends' names and not miss bedtime because service ran late. The truck gave me that. Simple food. Working people's hours, nothing that made me remember what I lost. Victoria was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer. Why didn't you tell me? Elijah turned, looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who'd hired him like staff, who'd watched her brother humiliate him without saying a word, who'd moved through his life like he was furniture. You never asked. The words landed gentle. True. Victoria's breath caught. I hired you. I brought you into my home. I've been living with you for weeks and I never... You hired a transaction, Elijah said. That's what you wanted. That's what I agreed to be. But you're not. Her voice cracked. You're... She stopped. Couldn't finish. Elijah could see it happening. The realization settling over her. That she'd spent weeks treating someone extraordinary like he was ordinary. That she'd been so focused on what she needed. She'd never once asked who he was. The kitchen was silent except for the coffee maker automatically brewing the first pot of the morning. I'm still the same person who signed those papers, Elijah said quietly. Still Maya's father. Still trying to give her a better life than I can afford on my own. Nothing's changed. Everything's changed. Victoria's hands pressed flat on the counter. You gave up a Michelin-starred restaurant to raise your daughter. You walked away from. She couldn't seem to find the words. And I've been treating you like what we agreed to. That doesn't make it right. The admission hung in the air. Victoria stood, paced to the window, pressed her forehead against the glass. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. I need your help. With what? The hotel restaurant, the one I'm losing everything over. She turned. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. I need someone who understands what I'm trying to build, who knows how to make food matter, who can. She stopped. Started again. I'm asking, not as part of our contract. as someone who's desperate and out of options and just realized she's been living with the answer for weeks without seeing it. Elijah studied her. This woman who controlled empires and negotiated billions and couldn't admit she needed help without her voice shaking. Professional consulting, he asked. Yes, you'll pay my rate, whatever you want. He almost smiled. I don't have a rate, haven't in 12 years. Then tell me what's fair. The coffee maker beeped. The sky outside was lighter now. In a few hours, Maya would wake up. The sky outside was lighter now. In a few hours, Maya would wake up. The day would start. Some wall between them had cracked. I'll help, Elijah said, but not for money. And not as part of what we signed. Then why? He thought about the question. About Victoria standing in that doorway watching him and Maya make cobbler. About the way she'd looked when she'd tasted the peach filling. Like she'd forgotten something existed and just remembered it. About her voice on the phone tonight, breaking under pressure no one should carry alone. Because you asked, he said simply. Victoria's eyes held his. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of it. Okay, she whispered. Outside, the sun broke over the horizon. Inside, two people who'd started as a transaction stood in a kitchen that smelled like duck and cherries and the ghost of something that might become real. The Laurent Grand Hotel development office smelled like fresh paint and ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over downtown Detroit, the city spreading gray and white under January snow. Victoria's team sat around the conference table. Project managers, architects, the hospitality consultants who'd been trying to save the restaurant concept for weeks. Elijah stood at the head of the table with a menu draft in front of him. This doesn't work, he said quietly. The lead consultant, a woman named Andrea who'd flown in from New York, stiffened. That menu was designed by a team with 40 years of combined experience in luxury dining. I know, I can tell. Elijah tapped the paper. It's designed by people who think about food like a business, not like feeding people. Victoria watched from her seat at the far end. She'd been watching him for 3 weeks now, watching him move through her crisis like he'd been doing this his whole life. Explain, Victoria said. Elijah pointed to the appetizer section. Deconstructed everything. Foam, gel, powder, its technique showing off. But nobody comes to a hotel restaurant in Detroit to feel like they're being tested. They come to feel taken care of. Andrea leaned back. The market research says. The market research is asking the wrong question. Elijah's voice stayed level. You're asking what impresses people. You should be asking what makes them feel at home. He pulled out his phone, showed them a photo of a dish simple plating, rich colors. Braised short rib with my grandmother's grits. Collard greens finished with smoked ham hock. Cornbread with honey butter. That's the headline dish. The room went quiet. That's, Andrea searched for words. Casual. This is supposed to be elevated. It is elevated. Elevated doesn't mean complicated. I means perfect. Elijah looked at Victoria. You want people to remember eating here, to bring their families, to celebrate anniversaries. You don't do that with foam. Victoria felt something shift in her chest, the way he spoke. No arrogance, no performance. Just certainty. The kind that came from knowing something so deeply you didn't need to prove it. Show us the full concept, she said. He did. Spent 2 hours breaking down the menu, the sourcing, the prep techniques. He talked about the black farmers he knew in Michigan, the heritage grains, the tomatoes that tasted like summer. He explained how to train a line to cook with care instead of speed, how to make luxury feel like love instead of status. The team listened. Even Andrea stopped arguing halfway through. When the meeting ended, Victoria stayed behind. Elijah was packing his notes, moving with the same efficient grace he brought to everything. Where did you learn to do that? She asked. Do what? Command, a room without raising your voice. He looked up. Same place I learned to cook, by caring more about the work than what people thought of me doing it. Victoria studied him. The afternoon light caught the angles of his face, the silver starting to show at his temples. He looked tired but steady, present. Thank you, she said. For what? For not letting me fail. Elijah's expression softened. You weren't going to fail. You were just asking the wrong question. He left. Victoria sat in the empty conference room for 10 minutes, thinking about how he'd looked at that menu like it personally offended him. How he talked about food like it mattered. How he challenged her entire team without making a single person feel small. She started coming home for dinner, not every night, but more than before. She'd finish calls by 6, drive back to Bloomfield Hills, find Elijah and Maya in the kitchen. She'd ask about their day. Maya would talk, school, friends, the book she was reading. Elijah would cook, his hands moving through prep with a rhythm that made Victoria's chest feel tight. One night in mid-January, Maya was explaining her science project. Something about plant cells and osmosis that Victoria didn't fully follow. Elijah listened with his whole attention, asking questions, making Maya think through her hypothesis. "So if the cell wall breaks, the whole thing falls apart?" Maya asked. "Pretty much. That's why structure matters, even in tiny things." Maya nodded seriously, then looked at Victoria. "Do you know about cells?" "A little. Biology wasn't my strength." "What was?" "Numbers, strategy, figuring out how things fit together. Like puzzles?" "Exactly like puzzles." Maya grinned. "Dad's terrible at puzzles. He tries to force pieces that don't fit." "I do not," Elijah protested. "You do. Remember the lighthouse one? You bent a piece." Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised her. Elijah looked at her. Something warm in his expression. "She's right. I did bend a piece." The moment stretched. Maya went back to her homework. Elijah went back to chopping vegetables. Victoria sat at the island and felt something. Another night, Elijah was teaching her to taste properly, not just eat taste. He'd made a simple tomato sauce, 4 variations with subtle differences. "Close your eyes," he said. "Tell me what you notice." Victoria tasted. Tomato, garlic, basil, deeper. What else? She tried again, focused, something sweet. And smoke. Smoked paprika. Just a pinch. Changes everything. He handed her the next spoon. Their fingers brushed. Victoria's breath caught. "This one's different," she said. "How?" "Brighter, more acid. Lemon zest. Makes it sing." She opened her. He was closer than she'd realized, dark eyes watching her with quiet intensity. The kitchen felt smaller, warmer. "You're a good student," he said softly. "You're a good teacher." The moment broke when Maya called from the living room, asking if they wanted to watch a movie. They did. Some animated thing about dragons. Maya fell asleep 20 minutes in, curled between them on the couch. Victoria looked down at the child's peaceful face, then across at Elijah. He was already watching her. Neither of them moved to wake Maya. Neither of them moved at all. The board meeting happened the last week of January. Quarterly review. Marcus was there, playing the concerned family member. The hotel project came up. He made his comment with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I see Victoria's recruited her little food truck project to save the restaurant. How resourceful." Victoria's hand tightened on her pen. The condescension, the dismissal, the way he said it like Elijah was a pet she'd brought to work. "Elijah Cross is the culinary consultant for Lauren Grand Hotel," she said. Her voice was ice. "He's restructured the entire food program, secured farm partnerships, and designed a menu that our advanced reviews are calling innovative. If you'd like to review his credentials, I'm happy to provide them. 2 Michelin stars, features in Food and Wine in the New York Times, recognition as one of the most influential chefs in new American cuisine before he chose to step back." The room went silent. Marcus's smile faltered. "I wasn't aware." "No, you weren't. Because you don't ask questions. You make assumptions. And you're wrong." She gathered her materials. Stood. "If there's nothing else, I have work to do." She walked out. Didn't look back. That night, Victoria stood in her bathroom getting ready for bed. Caught her reflection in the mirror, noticed something she hadn't seen in months. She was smiling. Not the corporate smile. Not the camera smile. A real one. The kind that came from somewhere deeper than strategy. She thought about Elijah in the kitchen, humming while he cooked. About Maya's laugh. About the way her house had started feeling less like a museum and more like something she didn't have a name for yet. She thought about how furious she'd been in that meeting. Not because Marcus had insulted her judgment, because he'd insulted Elijah, the man who'd saved her project, who'd taught her to taste lemon zest in tomato sauce, who'd looked at her tonight like she mattered. Victoria gripped the edge of the sink. She was falling. Had been falling for weeks, maybe. And she had no idea how to stop it. Didn't want to stop it. didn't want to stop it. The realization terrified her more than any boardroom ever had. Maya's fever spiked at 2:47 in the morning. Elijah heard her call his name, weak, confused. He was in her room in seconds. She was burning up, her brown skin flushed dark, her eyes glassy. The thermometer read 103 to 15. He'd been here before, different child, different lifetime, the same cold terror. "Hey baby, I got you." He kept his voice calm, lifted her from bed, wrapped her in a blanket. She was 11 but felt small against his chest. Too small. Her breath came fast and shallow. "Dad, I don't feel good." "I know. We're going to get you help." He texted Victoria's assistant, the emergency contact number he'd never used, grabbed his keys, carried Maya to his truck. The estate was silent. Dark. No lights in the main house. Victoria was in Chicago. Some board meeting. The ER smelled like antiseptic and fear. Bright lights that hurt to look at. Elijah filled out forms with one hand, keeping the other on Maya. She'd fallen asleep against him, her forehead hot against his shoulder. "Cross, Maya, cross," the nurse called 30 minutes later. They took her back, examined her, drew blood, asked questions. Elijah answered from muscle memory. Birth date, allergies, medical history. The doctor was young, efficient. Said it looked like flu, maybe bacterial. They'd run to get that fever down. They moved Maya to a room, put an IV in her small arm. She whimpered but didn't wake. Elijah sat beside her bed, holding her hand, watching the monitors. This was the thing they didn't tell you about being a parent. That you could do everything right and still end up in a hospital at 3 in the morning watching your child burn with fever and feeling completely helpless. He thought about Jasmine, about holding her hand in a different hospital, about how fast everything could fall apart. His phone buzzed. Victoria's assistant. Elijah stared at the message. 30 minutes later, he heard footsteps in the hall. Quick. Urgent. Victoria appeared in the doorway. She was still in yesterday's clothes. Suit wrinkled, hair coming loose, no coat. She'd come straight from the airport. Her eyes found Maya first, then him. "You didn't have to come," Elijah said. "Yes, I did." She moved to the other side of Maya's bed, looked at the monitors, the IV, Maya's sleeping face. Her hand trembled when she reached out to touch Maya's forehead. "What did they say?" "Flu. Maybe bacterial infection. They're waiting on labs." "When will they know?" "Few hours." Victoria nodded, pulled a chair close, sat. The hours moved slow. A nurse came in every 30 minutes, checked vitals, adjusted the IV, smiled reassuringly. Maya slept through most of it, her breathing evening out as the medicine worked. Around 5, Victoria went to find coffee, came back with 2 cups from the vending machine, both terrible. Elijah drank his anyway. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For bad coffee?" "For being here. You didn't have to be." Victoria looked at him across Maya's sleeping form. The fluorescent lights made everyone look tired, but on her it was different. "Real. I wanted to be." Her voice cracked. "I don't know when that changed, but it did." The words hung in the air between them. "Ebby die." "True." Elijah's chest tightened. He looked at her. This woman who'd hired him like staff, who'd offered money for a year of his life, who was supposed to be a transaction and nothing more. She was crying. Quietly, like she didn't want him to notice. Tears tracking down her face while she held Maya's hand like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Victoria, the first. The 1,000th. 1,000th. "Sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. For all of it. For treating you like, for not seeing. You're here now. I should have been here before." Maya stirred, opened her eyes. Saw them both sitting there, her father on one side, Victoria on the other. She smiled, small and tired but genuine. "You came," she said to Victoria. Of course the first did. Maya's eyes drifted closed again. Her breathing deepened. Peaceful. At 7, the doctor came back. Peaceful. At 7, the doctor came back. Fever was down to 122. Already caught it early. Antibiotics through the IV, home by afternoon. She'd be fine. Elijah's shoulders finally dropped. The tension he'd been holding for hours released all at once. He pressed his palms to his eyes. Victoria reached across Maya's bed, put her hand over his. They drove home in separate cars. Victoria following Elijah's truck through the morning traffic. The sun was coming up, turning Detroit gold. Maya slept in the passenger seat, finally cool, finally peaceful. Neither of them spoke in the car ride. But when Elijah looked in his rearview mirror, Victoria was there, following present. At the estate, he carried Maya to bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. She mumbled something about being hungry later, then drifted back to sleep. When he came out of her room, Victoria was in the hallway, still in her wrinkled suit, still looking at him like something had broken open inside her chest. "I have a board meeting at 2, she said. "Okay, I'll cancel it." "You don't have to. I want to." She started to say something else. Stopped. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. Her face changed. "What is it, Marcus?" Her voice went flat. "He's moved the hotel press dinner to this weekend. Invited every critic and investor on the list. Called it a pre-launch preview. Can he do that? He just did." She scrolled through the email. Her hands were shaking. Half the kitchen staff didn't show up for prep this morning. The ones who did said they were told the event was canceled. This is sabotage. Elijah's jaw tightened. When? Saturday night. 3 days. Victoria looked up at him. "I can't do this without a chef. I don't have one. The opening is ruined. He's going to destroy everything in front of everyone who matters." She looked destroyed herself, all the armor gone, just a woman who'd tried to hold an empire together and was watching it collapse. Victoria. She met his eyes. "Ask me," Elijah said quietly. "What?" "Ask me to help, not as part of the contract, not as a consultant, as your partner, if that's what you want." Victoria's breath caught. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't. I trust you, and I don't trust anyone." The admission cost her. Elijah could see it in every line of her face. "Then I'll do it," he said. "But not alone. We do this together. Together." The words settled between them like a promise. Saturday night was 3 days away. Marcus had the critics, the investors, and a kitchen designed to fail. But Elijah had 12 years of muscle memory, and a woman finally brave enough to ask for help. And for the first time since Jasmine died, he wanted to step back into that world. Not to prove anything, but to save something that mattered. The Laurent Grand Hotel's signature restaurant smelled like money and ambition. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. White tablecloths stretched across the dining room. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Detroit River, the city lights reflecting on dark water. 60 people filled the space. Food critics from the Free Press, the Times, Eater. Investors who'd put millions into the hotel's renovation. Industry insiders who could make or break a restaurant with a single review. Marcus sat at the bar, scotch in hand, watching his sister with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Victoria stood in the past between the dining room and kitchen, watching her world end. The kitchen was a disaster. Half the line cooks hadn't shown. The ones who did said they'd been told the event was canceled. Prep was incomplete. Stations were a mess. This wasn't incompetence. This was sabotage. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Good luck tonight, sis." Victoria's hands shook. She'd worked 20-hour days for 3 months, rebuilt the menu, hired the team, staked her entire reputation on this opening, and her brother had destroyed it in one calculated move. The dining room was getting restless. People checking watches, whispering. The kitchen doors opened. Elijah walked through in chef whites that fit like they'd been made for him. His close-cropped hair was neat. His dark skin caught the kitchen lights. He moved with purpose. No wasted motion, no hesitation. He looked at Victoria. "The first. You've got this. Trust me." She couldn't speak, could only nod. Elijah turned to the remaining kitchen staff. 3 line cooks, 2 prep cooks, 1 dishwasher. Not enough. Not nearly enough. "Listen up," he said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise. "We're going to run a modified menu. 4 courses. I'll call the orders. You execute. No shortcuts. No panic. We cook like we care." He moved to the first station, started organizing. His hands flew prepping mise en place, setting up stations, checking temperatures. The kitchen staff watched him for 3 seconds, then moved. Something in his presence pulled them into rhythm. Maya appeared in the doorway. Victoria had arranged for a car to bring her. The girl wore a nice dress, her braids neat. She stood watching her father with pride written all over her face. Elijah caught her eye, smiled, turned back to work. He started calling orders. First course, tomato salad. 6 on the fly. His hands moved like muscle memory, slicing heirloom tomatoes, paper thin, arranging them with burrata, drizzling aged balsamic. Each plate was art. Victoria carried them out herself, placed them in front of critics who'd come expecting disaster. The dining room went quiet. Then forks moved. Mouths opened. Second course, duck breast, cherry gastrique. 10 all day. Elijah worked the sauté station himself, searing duck skin side down, the fat rendering perfect. Building the gastrique. Cherries, vinegar, sugar reduced until it coated the spoon. Plating with the precision of someone who'd done this 10,000 times before. Victoria watched him through the pass. This wasn't the man who made sandwiches from a food truck. This was someone else, someone she was only now starting to see. The courses went out. Each one perfect. Each one impossible given the circumstances. The dining room's energy shifted. Whispers became conversation. Skepticism became interest. Victoria moved through the tables, but she wasn't performing, wasn't calculating, was just present, genuinely there. Third course, braised short rib, his grandmother's grits, collard greens. This was the headline dish, the one Elijah had fought for in that meeting weeks ago. Southern food elevated through perfect technique, simple ingredients treated with respect. The food critic from the Free Press, a woman named Sarah Chen who'd been reviewing Detroit restaurants for 15 years, took her first bite. She went still, set down her fork, picked it up again, took another bite. Her dining companion leaned in. "What is it?" Sarah's eyes were wide. "This technique, I know this." She stood, walked to the pass where Victoria stood, looked through to the kitchen where Elijah worked. "Excuse me," Sarah called. "Chef?" Elijah looked up. His hands didn't stop moving. "Who made this dish?" "I did." Sarah stared at him. Recognition dawning. The plating, the way the collards are finished, the gastrique on the duck. Her voice rose. "This is Elijah Cross's cooking, Meridian Elijah Cross." The dining room went silent. "You're Elijah Cross," Sarah said. Not a question, a statement. "The Meridian chef. We thought you were gone." Conversations stopped, heads turned. Everyone in the room knew that name. The chef who'd disappeared 12 years ago after his wife died. The prodigy who'd walked away from 2 Michelin stars. Marcus's face drained of color. Victoria stepped forward. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. "Everyone," she said. The room turned to her. "I'd like to introduce Elijah Cross, Laurent Grand Hotel's new culinary director." She looked at Elijah through the pass. He was watching her. His dark eyes held hers across the space. "He's extraordinary," Victoria continued, her voice cracked. "And he's my husband." She didn't say contract husband, didn't say business arrangement, just said it like it was true. The room erupted. Critics pulling out phones. Investors standing. Questions flying. Sarah Chen was already typing on her phone, breaking the story. Marcus stood at the bar. His smug expression was gone, replaced by something Victoria had never seen on his face before. Defeat. He left without a word. Just set down his scotch and walked out. The rest of the night blurred. Fourth course went out. Jasmine's cornbread with truffle honey, reinterpreted as a dessert with fresh cream and roasted peaches. Critics were taking notes. Investors were shaking Victoria's hand. The head of Laurent Holdings board asked to schedule a meeting. Maya stayed in the kitchen doorway the whole time, watching her father work, beaming. By 11, the dining room was empty. Critics left raving. Investors left apologizing, forever doubting. Investors left apologizing, forever doubting. The kitchen staff left exhausted but grinning. Victoria stood in the empty kitchen with Elijah. The lights were still bright. The stoves were cooling. The silence felt heavy with everything unsaid. "Thank you," Victoria whispered. "For what?" "For saving me. For saving all of this." Elijah stepped closer. His chef whites were stained. His face was tired. He'd never looked more real to her. "You saved yourself," he said quietly. "You just let me help." Victoria's breath caught. "I don't know how to do this. This thing that's happening between us. I don't know how to do this. I don't know the rules." "There aren't any rules." Elijah's hand came up, touched her face. "That's the whole point. I hired you to be my husband. I didn't think. I never expected. I know. I don't know when it changed. I do, Elijah said. The night you came to the hospital, the night you chose to be there. Victoria's eyes filled. I'm terrified. Me too. What if I ruin this? What if you don't? He kissed her. Soft. Careful. Like she was something precious. Victoria kissed him back. Not careful. Not controlled. Just honest. When they pulled apart, she was crying. He wiped her tears with his thumb. This is real, she whispered. Isn't it? Yeah, Elijah said. This is real. July came to Detroit like a promise. Warm sun, clear skies. The kind of summer day that made people forget how hard winter had been. Pop's kitchen sat in its usual spot outside the medical center, the lunch line wrapping around the block like it always did. Elijah worked the grill with Maya beside him, both of them moving through the rhythm they'd perfected over the years. She was 12 now, taller, still wearing her hair in braids but doing them herself, still talking about restaurants the way some kids talked about being astronauts. Dad, the brisket's ready. Good eye. Wednesday and Thursday were food truck days. The rest of the week, Elijah ran the kitchen at Laurent Grand Hotel. Not every service. 3 nights a week. Enough to keep the restaurant excellent, not enough to forget who he was. The lunch rush ended at 2. Elijah was wiping down the counter when Victoria's car pulled up. She stepped out in a summer dress instead of a suit, her hair down instead of pulled back. She'd learned to dress for life instead of performance. Walked up to the window and smiled. 1 brisket sandwich, she said. Extra pickles. You know I remember your order. I like hearing you say it. Maya grinned from the back. You guys are gross. Go clean the prep station, Elijah said. But he was smiling too. Victoria leaned against the truck. The medical center buzzed around them, nurses on break, doctors grabbing lunch, patients getting air, normal sounds of a Wednesday afternoon. Can we talk? Victoria asked. Elijah's chest tightened. Yeah. They walked to the small park across the street, sat on a bench under a tree. Victoria's hands twisted in her lap. The contract ends tomorrow, she said quietly. 1 year. 12 months. The anniversary of that ceremony in the judge's chambers where they'd signed papers and felt nothing. Elijah had been thinking about it for weeks, what it meant, what happened next. I know, he said. Victoria turned to face him. Her eyes were bright. Scared. Do you want to renew? The question hung between them. Elijah looked at her. This woman who'd hired him like staff, who'd learned to love his daughter, who'd shown up at 3 in the morning because Maya had a fever and stayed until dawn. No, he said. Victoria's face crumbled. Her breath caught. Oh, Elijah took her hand. I don't want to renew the contract, Victoria the First. Want the real thing. If you do. She went still. Her eyes searched his. What? I want to marry you for real. Not for a year. Not for your inheritance. Not because there's a contract. His voice was steady, certain. Because I love you. Because I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. Because when I think about the future, you're in it. You and Maya and me. Real. Victoria's hands trembled in his. You love me? Yeah, I do. Tears spilled down her face. She laughed through them, the sound bright and broken and free. God, I love you too. So much it terrifies me. Elijah pulled her close, kissed her forehead. So that's a yes? Yes. God, yes. They remarried 3 weeks later. Not in a judge's chambers this time. In the backyard of what they now called home, the Bloomfield Hills estate that had stopped feeling like a museum and started feeling like a place where a family lived. Maya was flower girl. She wore yellow again. Her choice. Walked down the makeshift aisle scattering petals with a grin so big it made Elijah's chest hurt. The ceremony was small, 20 people. Victoria's assistant Caroline. A few of Elijah's suppliers from the farmers' markets. Staff from the hotel who'd become friends, no Marcus. He'd tried one final legal challenge and lost. The board had sided with Victoria months ago. The officiant, a woman who actually knew them, not a stranger pulled from a hallway, spoke about love as a choice made daily. About partnership built on honesty. About family formed not from blood, but from showing up. When Elijah said, I do, this time, it felt like beginning instead of ending. When Victoria said the first do, her voice broke on it. They kissed. Maya cheered. The small gathering clapped. Later that evening, after the guests left and the sun started to set, the 3 of them stood in the kitchen together. I want to learn to make Mom's cornbread, Maya said, the way Dad makes it. Victoria and Elijah looked at each other. This moment, Maya calling Jasmine Mom, and Victoria standing there without flinching, without jealousy, just present. I'll teach you, Elijah said. Victoria already had the ingredients out. She'd learned the recipe months ago, practiced it until she got it right. She measured the cornmeal while Elijah showed Maya how to work the buttermilk in slowly. Not too much at once, let it come together. Maya's hands moved carefully, trying to get it right. Victoria added the honey, the secret ingredient, the thing that made it Jasmine's recipe. They worked together, Elijah calling instructions, Maya mixing, Victoria preparing the pan. The kitchen filled with the smell of baking bread and something else. Something that didn't have a name but felt like safety, like home. When the cornbread came out of the oven, they ate it right there at the counter. No plates. Just the three of them breaking off warm pieces, butter melting into the crumb. This is perfect, Maya said. Victoria laughed. Your dad's been teaching me for months. I'm glad it finally worked. You did good, Victoria. The words sat light but meant everything. Victoria's eyes got bright again. Elijah watched them. His daughter, growing up strong and kind and loved. His wife, his real wife, who'd learned that control wasn't strength, that love wasn't strength, that love wasn't weakness, that letting people in didn't make you less. He thought about Jasmine, about the love they'd built and lost, about how grief had nearly destroyed him, about the years he'd spent convinced he'd never feel whole again. He'd been wrong, not because Victoria replaced what he'd lost, but because she'd shown him there was room for both. Room to honor the past and build a future. Room to remember the ghost he'd loved and love the woman standing in front of him. Room for a heart to break and mend and break again and keep beating. Victoria caught him looking. What? Nothing. Just this. She smiled, understood. Maya was already talking about culinary school, about the restaurants she wanted to open someday, about recipes she was inventing in her head. The sun set outside the kitchen windows. Detroit glowed in the distance, the city that had broken them both and put them back together different, better. Victoria's hand found Elijah's across the counter, their fingers intertwined, no contracts, no clauses, no expiration date. Just the simple truth that love couldn't be negotiated into existence, couldn't be controlled or managed or bought. It could only be chosen. Daily, honestly, with hands open and hearts willing to risk everything. They'd both been broken, both been alone. Both built walls so high they'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. And somehow, impossibly, they'd found each other in the wreckage. Built something real from the pieces. Made a family out of strangers who'd learned to stop being strangers. The cornbread was almost gone. Maya was laughing about something. Victoria was smiling in a way she never used to smile. Unguarded, genuine, free. Elijah squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. And in that kitchen, in a mansion that finally felt like home, a father and a daughter and a woman who'd learned what partnership really meant stood together in the warm July evening, their intertwined hands a promise that some things broken could be made whole again, that some families were built instead of born, and that love, real love, was always worth the risk.